Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hey everybody, welcome to the Tatiana Show. Today we're going to talk about a lot of different things, a little bit of music, a little bit of space, a little bit of DeFi, KYC, AML stuff with Grant Blaisdell. Hey, nice to see you, Grant. Thanks for joining us on the Tatiana Show.
Good to see you again, Tatiana.
Yes,
Thanks
excellent.
for having me.
Yeah, well, we're excited to get started. Josh, do you have questions prepared?
I have lots of questions, as always. But
I sound like a teacher. I'm like, where are your questions?
No, I mean, what I'd like to first find out is a little bit of what you've been up to, Grant, and your different projects.
Yeah, once again, thanks for having me, guys. And so as Tatiana said, my name's Grant Blaisdell. I'm originally an American, as you can hear a little bit, but I've done a lot of work also in Central Europe. And because of the ventures I've had, I've gotten to work with great companies all around the world, especially in the crypto space. I originally kind of came out of, let's say, the California startup ecosystem in LA, focused mainly around digital media, distribution and monetization models around digital media, music and video content, etc. That's where I had my first startup when I was around 19, which was a mobile video distribution platform with integrated branding. This was on touchscreens in 2007, so little ahead of its time, let's say. Got to do a few other cool projects, some pre-dev on stuff that eventually became Hulu. At a certain point, though, I got to this life mission where my mother's originally from Warsaw. And if you know anything about the Polish tech scene here, great tech, great analytics, great ideas, great minds. But as a lot of, I think it's, Central Europe, I think it's a European problem overall, the access to early stage capital, the terms of that capital, and also kind of the cultural attitude stuff that comes with some of these global startups of being really successful was lacking. So I came to Warsaw probably around 2012 with that mission to kind of build that bridge. I did some JVs with some big media companies around here. I was already doing blockchain stuff. Blockchain was kind of my aha technology to solve some of the key core issues I was trying to solve around digital media and these distribution and monetization models, right? And just now are we starting to see these kind of models around this technology creep in. So I did some work around that with some media companies out here. Around the same time, though, I got introduced to what would become my co-founders of Coinfirm, which very quickly became a global leader when it comes to analytics and specifically anti-money laundering and risk analytics for blockchain and cryptocurrencies. That was about 5 years ago, formally, when we started that project. Early on, we got a lot of heat for kind of our approach and what we were doing. But our long-term vision stayed true and the market matured and morphed along with it. And, one of the things we're going to touch on today is the DeFi element and we'll lightly touch on how these elements are entering that space. But
let's hold off. There's a lot of stuff to unpack just there.
Sure. Sorry, I had one more.
All right, one more. Go.
No. Seriously, go ahead. It's fine. You can cut it off there, and then we can.
Yeah. No. Look, I fully understand the heat that you get. Crypto is based on this anarchic principles of build the rules around math, and of course. When we started seeing regulators show up more and more at these the crypto events, and then they became these boring regulator events, basically, after a while. Yeah. But I think it's one of these businesses that are actually a really good business to be in because everybody is now forced to use them, and the regulators never look at the data. So you just have to show that you've got an invoice from a company like that, and then they're happy. It's like,
yeah, I'm not going to comment on how the regulators respond or do their due diligence towards these entities, etc. But you said something that's important, which I want to touch on, which is how we approached, which I also think is something that separates us from our competitors in a lot of ways, is we kind of get and represent both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
So like our CEO and co-founder, he ran global AML for RBS, but we have a heavy crypto side and understand those ideals. And also, we're flipping how this whole AML regulatory compliance thing has been done up until this day. So our whole thing has been about democratization of AML. Take it from something that's highly ineffective, inefficient, huge overhead, can be used as a hammer against smaller competitive competition by big incumbents, et cetera. All those arguments, there's validity to them, right? So we kind of flipped that and we turned it into, this near automated utility so that anyone from a smallest startup to the largest financial institution can run all that in-house, right? And kind of level that playing field when it comes to that. So, we wanted to do and have in our mind successfully done this the right way, and also not let just regulators or governments or whatever run with the topic themselves. And that's a very big mistake that the crypto community made early on, was that they were too ideological about it and just kind of gave middle fingers to the whole thing and let people who don't have any interest or really understanding of that part, right, kind of run with it. So although I of course understand, the ideological aspect and why something like us can be of concern to some people. But I think we've done, that stuff was coming, right?
Yeah.
All this stuff is coming. So it's all a matter of doing it the best way and for the long-term, growth and development of the crypto space overall.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see that DeFi, for instance, or DeFi, as I like to call it, is it's kind of a kick back towards this sort of thing. It's like, look, I don't want to go into an exchange. They're taking my personal details. If they lose those personal details, which they often do, then my passport, everything's out in the wild, getting sold, and all of a sudden I get a black mark against my name because someone's taken a loan out in my name and never paid it back, and now I'm stuck.
Well, here's the flip side on that. Another thing that we've done in the past year is called Reclaim Crypto. This is something that, along with our partners like Kroll or Duff and Phelps, the flip side of that situation is when you're going through any of these DeFis or these no KYC type of exchanges, any market analysis on top of this, but when your stuff gets hacked, your stuff gets taken, all these sort of things, you're done, right? There's nothing there that can give you any sort of recourse or anything like that. So when you look at market analysis, the DEX, the no KYC exchanges, et cetera, those are the ones that fall the most, where clients lose their money the most, et cetera. So just like custodians are coming into the game, these people who think that there's going to be some global adoption of crypto and people are going to be having private keys all the time and all. I mean, it's a little utopian. Yeah. And, it comes back to these original kind of ideological things, which I understand them and I understand the emotional part, but there's a certain utopianness about all this. And to think that, DeFi, the way it's building and running right now, that regulators aren't going to come in on that is also a utopian thought. And I agree with you. It's, it's a rebirth that has some of these principles and characters of the ICO boom as well, right? Which we're the only ones who are really doing AML, I think, around ICOs, because we're the first ones to be able to analyze ERCs, et cetera. So we did like 70 ICOs then. It's just, it's waves, and I think the market's going through its maturity when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So are you guys now, like, what is your solution for this problem in DeFi? Did we get into that?
Yeah, we came out recently with the AMLT Oracle. It's an AML Oracle that's there to serve the needs of DEXs and DeFi, so that they can kind of also stay true to their decentralized ethos. So our long-term stuff around certain things like that has been to be able to automate these aspects, fulfill the highest standard that's possible, but do so in a way that keeps these entities operating within their model.
So when you say that, because I think a lot of the audience would be interested in that concept of that regulators would go after a decentralized exchange. And the whole point of having decentralized exchanges is that there's no one to really go after. How do you see that working? How do people go after decentralized exchanges? For instance, Uniswap, yeah, you've got the core devs, you've got the core product, but there's like, I think 10 different websites that plug into the smart contracts, so you can use them outside of that. It's
To
kind of
be
hard
honest, it's stepping, I think, a little outside of my realm of even what I think I should be talking about when it comes to that. I can't really comment on how the regulators are going to come in. My personal opinion is that, once again, a lot of this DeFi, a lot of these, especially early supposed DEXs, etc., there's a
they're
lot
so
of
centralized. Anyway.
Yeah, a lot of times it's not that. Someone built it. Someone placed it. A lot of them have in their smart contracts. Someone's getting paid somewhere, right? This isn't charity all the time, at least. So that's all they need, in my viewpoint, right? Is that there's any sort of centralized entity that's benefiting off of it, or that set it up. So, I can't comment that's on that stuff. The regulatory side isn't my personal strongest side of it. But I think you'll see a lot of what's happened, to the exchanges over the past 3-4 years, right? It's just like I said earlier, we're trying to come with a solution that is good, that will fulfill this, but is still under this ethos, or fulfills, kind of this natural growth of crypto and what we think is best for it, and not just come in with some oppressive sort of structures, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, let's move past this DeFi stuff, because, we can only talk about it for
There's
so
a lot
much.
of it out there.
Yeah, right. But I think that you're working on a couple different things, right? So you've got this music play that you're doing, and then you've also got this outer space marketplace. So what's going on? It sounds out of this world.
Yeah, well, the music stuff has always been there. That's always been a part of me. When we first met Tatiana, one thing, we always connected around was the music stuff. So, like I said in the beginning, my original foray into blockchain technology was applying it to digital media and music, etc. I've been a musician since I was 4 is kind of a rough term, but I've been playing instruments and doing music since I was very young. And it's something I've continued as, well into my adulthood, whether it's from a production end or an artist myself end. But around that, I've kind of been treating myself as my own guinea pig. I started off with just giving fans Bitcoin at concerts, right? So I'd do something where I'd throw stickers on stage, one as a big B, then I'd make them do some Instagram thing, pick the best one. And then after the concert, they would come up to me. I'd have them download their wallet. I'd transfer some Bitcoins to them. And the reason I did that wasn't, how I communicate the value of just even small things like that to the music industry or whatever it may be, is I now have a direct connection of value transfer with my user, my fan, my listener, whatever it may be. Something that, when I talked about having the aha moments with blockchain stuff is, it's not to eliminate, once again, kind of early mistakes of the crypto viewpoints. You're not there to eliminate Spotify, just like you're not there to eliminate Bank of America. That's not the purpose around that. But you're there to provide different incentives for users to interact directly with, in this case, the creator, right? So long term, what this is turning into is the whole Mr. Crypto concept, which is label that I'm creating with a concert agency, some people from some major labels. But underneath it sits things such as Tixi, for example, right? Which Tixi is a ticketing application that uses the same sort of blockchain infrastructure that my Space platform uses, right? So we're going to eliminate fraud, and we're going to own the secondary market, which is, a big thing around that, right? So it's about taking this technology and applying it, once again, to the mistakes of all these ICO music projects, which is like, hey, we're going to take blockchain and shove it into the industry. Screw the incentives, blockchain, right? And the other end, you have music guys who are trying to handle blockchain. And you have this kind of disconnect. right? So what we're trying to do is really bring this technology in an organic manner into the industry from within the industry, and provide it more like I view the Mr. Crypto label as the future of labels, more so that we're providing tools and platform sets for artists to use to bring those users directly to them and cut out as many middlemen as possible. Once again, it's not to remove Spotify. It's not to remove these entities. I'll always tell an artist, put your stuff there. You know, critical mass is important. That's one of the biggest issues that, you know, these blockchain focused social media platforms, et cetera, is they can't gain any critical mass, right? So it's not to dissuade from that, but it's to, once again, if I gave an example of, let's say Kanye drops an album tomorrow, right? Uh, let's say he puts them on all the platforms at once, but he has his own digital property, whatever, Kanye West.com, whatever you want it to be. If he provides users incentives to interact directly on his digital properties as opposed to these middlemen, he's absolutely creating a new type of value connection between him and his users, right? He's owning that. So that's something that we're doing, and next year you're going to see some testing of this. One of them will be with Tixie, so this will be at, you'll start seeing festivals and concerts that are using this. As you know, one of my partners in it runs a concert agency, so it pretty much enters directly in the system. We're going to be doing some kind of use case conceptual aspects, testing the tokenization of music and artists and those digital properties. I'm going to be one of those guinea pigs, which we're going to do our first kind of tests with a project called the New American Dream, which should be out around election time, which is mine. That I'm just going to be registering in blockchain, kind of showing early use cases. But early next year,
what is the early use case? I mean, I don't quite get it. What does that mean? Because blockchain, like people, you just say blockchain, and people don't know what the fuck.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the Kanye West example, right? So I'm going to come in, I'm going to listen to this album in full on his properties. For that, I get rewarded, let's say, with some sort of NFT or some
on the property, like his website or something.
Yeah, digital property, right? So instead of going and interacting with Spotify, I can go and interact directly with the artist. But what's my incentive to do so, right? Once again, with the mass of artists that sit on Spotify. Well, I'm going to provide them incentives through some sort of tokenization models. How the artist wants to execute this is generally on him. We'll give him kind of some predefined tool sets or templates around this sort of aspect. But it could be as simple as merch discounts, or it could be something as intimate as backstage, depending on your usage, right? Let's say I listened to 100 hours and I bought the album, right? That should give me a different sort of access level than someone who just listened to the album once.
What blockchain are you guys going to use to do some of this tokenization?
Yeah, we originally like Copernic, which is the space one we'll get into in a moment. That one's built on Ethereum, Tixie, all that stuff initially is built on Ethereum. To be honest though, because these solutions aren't here to entice crypto users. I'm not expecting on either of these platforms for Live Nation, concert agencies, or regular users to be putting in Ethereum or accepting Ethereum back for payment, right? So it needs to be commercially viable. So right now I'm actually exploring a transfer. I can mention a few of them that I'm speaking to if you want. I have a good relationship with Cello. It's really easy to transfer from Ethereum onto that. So, I think I'm one of those
things that are already on the Ethereum blockchain into a different blockchain, and then just reassigning the tokens with a more flexible chain.
Neither of these things are public yet. So these are hopefully things that we can address in some sort of long-term sense right before launch. Once again, the cool thing about some of these other protocols, et cetera, is that the transfer from Ethereum is really easy. I'm one of these people you're talking to where it's like, I'm trying to approach it from a commercially viable sense. And I have my worries about transaction costs, about scalability on a space on a B2B space marketplace. I can't have them clogged up with their transactions. I can't have that instability and lack of scalability in that sort of sense. And if we're doing concerts and there's, a festival and there's 20,000 people trying to come in and do all this stuff at once, that might end up being an issue. So, blockchain industry's matured crazy fast for its short amount of time. But it's still has things that need to be kind of addressed and mature a little bit more.
Yeah, I hear about a lot of these NFTs kind of clogging up Ethereum, and then the fees are extremely high. So I'm not sure how that's going to resolve itself. But I feel like there's always this pie in the sky. Oh, it's going to scale one day, and I haven't seen any solutions for that yet.
Yeah,
What is
remember when people were still yelling about, they would call them private blockchains then, right? And they would scream about it, how horrible it is. Well, they have their applications. It's, like Bitcoin's blockchain is there for, in my opinion, the most part is this great digital asset, right? It's not there to buy bread, right? So I think different protocols have different, applications, and I think people need to kind of accept that at this point.
Yeah, cool. So what's the Copernicus space then? Because they
Yeah,
seem
compared to,
related in some way. Are they using a similar chain?
yeah,
Because one of
yeah,
them is only about space, I thought. So tell us about that.
yeah. So Copernicus space is actually as old, if not older, of a concept and idea than Coinfirm. It's just one of those things where I learned my lessons. Remember, I talked about the mobile video distribution thing, right? And being like 5 years too early around that. So that was at a point where the space industry, wasn't in this kind of openness and maturity towards technologies like blockchain. Blockchain itself as a technology, I don't think was at a mature enough level to handle seriously any sort of applications in that space. Um, so as I'm kind of going to be less in spending on Coinfirm, I'm going to be focusing more on Copernicus space, which a lot of people don't get this. Like the space, we call it the space economy, but the space industry itself today is hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars worth already, right? It's supposed to hit $1 trillion around the next decade. Um, Obviously, one of the more important industry or markets for the future of not just the United States, but countries around the world. Uh, there's this massive market, and also there's a big segment of it, which in my opinion is on Earth is equally important, which is what they call downstream assets. For Copernicus space, we call them digital space assets. So this is satellite data, imagery, software, intellectual property. You could kind of throw in there as well, right? And this industry is already around $200 billion segment of it. Amazing thing about all of this is that there is no actual real marketplace in any sort of modern digital scalable sense. The reason we focus on providing a marketplace for these downstream assets, or what we call digital space assets, as opposed to what a lot of people focus on, which is the rockets and things going up, right? The physical, tangible things, is because we don't view that as easily scalable or commercializable in scale, and has more logistics issues introduced to it because it's physical. Um, so at least in the beginning, we're focused on providing a marketplace to what we call these digital space assets. So there's just as a use case, there's startups, for example, that shoot up some satellites. They generate some imagery and data. Then another startup takes that data, repackages it in some actionable format, and then sells it to farmers, farming companies, and a government in Angola. That's an actual use case that we're going to be executing on the Copernicus space platform, just to show you, an easy to understand wide element of how you can take these digital space assets and how they're being applied on Earth. We forget all the time, like almost everything we're using right now, the computer, the phone, most of these things come out of, aerospace or defense focused, technologies and projects. Right. So
But
we
isn't
miss a lot of the times, all these assets, the billions and eventually trillions of assets that the world doesn't have easy access to in any sort of commercial sense. And this problem extends as far as, NASA. NASA literally has billions of dollars of intellectual property, data, et cetera, that it wants to more openly commercialize. It's just the industry is still very much run on kind of like these 1960s sort of business processes. And blockchain uniquely provides the security mixed with scalability sort of element that this industry also requires, right? So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of a quick.
So, I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to get my head around this.
Sure.
So I spent $1 billion on a satellite or a network of them or whatever to do something. I collect a whole heap of data, and that data I want to sell.
Right.
Why wouldn't I just sell that data?
Yeah,
Why do
who's
I?
currently buying that data that makes it such a lucrative industry? Like, why would they want to change that?
A lot of it is governments. You can see the tech companies also go into this space a lot. But once again, these are not open marketplaces for these sort of things, right? These are more of direct business relationships that are being done and executed. And loads of these companies are looking for new ways to do this, but that's not really their specialty. That's not their thing. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's like having blockchain guys trying to shove blockchain into the music industry, right? There's all these sort of these kind of nuances. And, you can help take care of that really, in a certain sense. We've approached it by having a kind of fully balanced team as well. I have the blockchain element, but I do have a history around, space, actually multi-generational. My grandfather was, a professor around aerospace at the military institute here in Poland. My mother has been involved in the industry for years. We have a foundation in it together. So we've kind of sat in this sauce for years, and we've seen what these issues are. And now there's this perfect moment that's come. That's allowed this technology and this industry and this big market opportunity and need to all meet at once. We're of course going to follow, whatever regulatory needs that companies or entities onboarding onto our platform may have, such as, geo blocking certain entities from seeing offers on the marketplace, right? For example, some company doesn't want Chinese companies to be looking at their stuff. So we're
Maybe
approaching
people
this
fake it
very
though. I mean, how do you make sure that the people that are buying the data are who they say they are?
KYC. Oh, strict KYC. That's one good thing about being around the regulatory space and doing all those token sales, et cetera, is understanding kind of these processes. So you have a strict KYC, the identity, any sort of action or NFT that they register for themselves as ownership or purchase off the platform, because all these digital assets are NFT'd, right? And within them, you can store loads of metadata, login credentials, et cetera. But we have a very strict KYC onboarding process. And then we also have something called KYM, which is know your material. So we need to validate that these companies or these entities have the rights to own or sell or license whatever they're trying to do.
So why do you need a blockchain? Why can't you use like a multi-sig database or some sort of like to secure the data? I guess, and that's the most important thing, is to secure the data. Someone can't hack it and leak it all, in terms of a commercial sense. But why a blockchain? Because it seems to me like an overcomplication rather than just having a service like eBay for space data.
The tokenization element is extremely important around that. So this is why, for example, you saw early on, like people got really excited around like blockchain and asteroid mining, right? Is because you need some sort of way to compartmentalize this asset in this very immutable, traceable, trusted way. And you did bring in.
Why do you need that? Sorry, man, I'm not being. I'm just interested in why you need that from asteroid mining. Like, why do you need an immutable? Can't they just mine a whole bunch of stuff and then
why
sell
do you
it?
think people get so interested in blockchain towards real estate and all these sort of aspects? Like if I'm creating let's say I have one asset, but I want to create 1 million of them, but have all of them to be unique and traceable at the same time, right? From my understanding, I'm not the most technical person around blockchain and crypto in that sort of sense.
So it's to securitize the asset,
yeah,
and then sell the rights to the asset on secondary markets.
I would yeah, you could call it secondary market, I guess. But another element of this, for example, is on top of this marketplace is a big issue for space companies or projects, even NASA, is funding, financial support. So any of these companies or projects that's verified on the platform, they can do whatever they want on the marketplace, but there's a second layer on the marketplace where they can put their project for public exposure, right? And then you kind of enter into that ICO STO model. It all depends on the regulatory framework you want to go. The STO stuff isn't mature enough yet, so we're not going to do that till it is. But now it's going to be built on this kind of utility charitable token model. So it's really about providing a foundation for what we call this digital space economy, right? And having it distributed, but having it all sort of traceable and transparent. From my understanding, blockchain provides the best sort of opportunity, security, scalability around that without giving up certain issues. Like it's funny because you brought the eBay. Like I said, my goal would be to bring a sort of easy user experience of purchasing and acquiring things like this as eBay has made it before. The issue is that when you're dealing with stuff like that, you can't just have that sort of back end, I think, that eBay would have in that sort of space, because we're dealing with very sensitive stuff. Of course, we're going to do our best to have least responsibility, quote unquote, around holding, touching any of these assets, right? I think your question is very valid. I think that's a question that not enough blockchain related projects actually ask themselves. I've deferred to people who know way more about this than I do in the sense. I built the model, the vision behind it is the same one that's going into the ticketing aspect, right? And, there's people on my team, for example, who did, the first blockchain kind of pilots with the Department of Defense. There's validity in this. Although I would happily do a follow-up with you guys one day and can do a more deeper dive around that question, because I think that's a question for the industry overall.
Have you reached out to other blockchain space projects? Like, wasn't Jeff Garzik working on a space thing for a while? I don't know what happened with that.
Space Chain, I believe, is his.
Yeah. So are you talking with other space projects yet?
We're a little bit, but we're more focused on, providing a solution to the industry. I don't, I'm, me, Tatiana, I'm always open to be collaborative and find out the best kind of mutual opportunity and things. We've just been really heavy focused and had our heads down on creating the solution and working on our use cases with people in the industry. So like I brought that Angolan satellite data with the farming, that's a real thing that's happening, and we're going to be executing on that. And hopefully also show that you can cut down, a business process that can take weeks to, a couple of hours or whatever, a very short time span. So there's a huge market opportunity there. I can't guarantee that we're going to be the ones that fulfill it long term, but we're definitely the one that's attacking it seemingly the first and hardest in this sort of concept. So, long term goals is get even NASA on this platform, have NASA put all this IP and data that they want to commercialize publicly. And, this would have to change the law, I think, at this point. But if they have a budget shortfall, let the American public fund it.
Hey, sorry, man. I just really want to get, because I think the listeners at home, they don't, I mean, if they're anything like me, that they just want to sort of understand it a little bit more. Let's say I'm a farmer.
Yeah.
I'm a farmer in the middle of nowhere. I've got my tractor, self-driving tractor. It's the best tech I've ever bought. It's fantastic, but it needs some data because global warming and is constantly on television. I'm thinking, ooh, if that's a threat, I better find out. I need some satellite photos. I'm going to go to spacedata.io or whatever it is. I just made that up. I don't know what the website's going to be. Is that the thing that you do? You go there, you buy some Ethereum, you send it to a smart contract or something, or you buy some token and then trade that token for the data, or do I trade euros directly or slotty?
Yeah, I get what you're thinking. I'm glad you brought it up because it comes back to this. We're not presenting this through a crypto light. This is supposed to be a commercial thing. So
Right.
I am company A that transforms that has satellite data and provides it in actionable format. Right.
Right.
Okay, so I'm
So
on
that
board.
means like a bunch of big files that are huge JPEGs, and I can download like a 10 by 10 kilometer picture, 1 kilometer per
Let's
meter
say,
or something,
let's
or
say,
one
right.
pixel per meter or something.
Really, it's a data set at the end of the day, right?
Right.
In some form. So they have that. They go through the KYM process, which was the registering and validating your ownership to sell this, right? And let's say they want to create one license for it. So they create one license. They set all the parameters. It's this type of data. Here's the login credentials, whatever they want in there, right? They register that. They set the parameters for the offer. So let's say it's $1,000 for this data set. Just giving basic examples. That's also embedded in there. What that's actually doing when they put it on the marketplace is creating a smart contract, what we call smart offer based around it. Okay. Then you have the farmer on the other end. He's been onboarded, right?
Yeah.
He goes, I could use these sort of data sets.
Yeah.
He goes, okay, what is it? $1,000. All right, $1,000. What we're going to be doing is we're working with payment railways as well, so that on each end, these entities don't have to put in or pull out crypto. So what I'm hoping to have when we finalize this with the payment guys is that farmer, he either has his bank account or he has his credit card or whatever attached to that, right? Yeah. He says, okay, $1,000, I do it. He does the 1,000. Then that gets transferred to a stable coin, right? So that the transfer of value can move along the smart contract as well, along with the transfer of the asset.
Okay.
Once that hits, escrow pretty much unlocks it, right? NFT goes here, they get it. It's given to them in a user interface to where they can interact with it. It's not like they get it on their wallet. And we're not expecting people to be programmers on the other end, pretty much.
But the farmer gets like a zip file with the data set on there.
Right, and he gets an NFT that proves that he has the right to this as well.
Which unlocks the zip,
right.
Let's say.
Right, correct. And on the other end, that moves, stablecoin still pumps out fiat the other end into their bank account or whatever sort of setup that they have.
And if his neighbor wants to use the same data set, he couldn't just send the zip file and the NFT over to him.
No.
Why not? Can't he just use that data at his own discretion?
Technically, he could. But one thing, just like in the Tixie aspect, we're kind of keeping it closed in a sense, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but isn't the whole point of an NFT that you get to then take advantage of the value of that item and be able to sell it?
I think people have I think people in crypto have approached NFTs from speculative perspectives. Almost.
I mean, they're doing pretty well in that regard. I mean, people are trading lots of things.
I'm not talking about that perspective. A Kanye West CD costs $10.
Okay.
You're buying an NFT that shows ownership.
I think we're veering off into something else. I guess what I'm wondering if I bought a certain data set, right, sure, and there's an NFT aspect to it, I would expect to take advantage of being able to reuse that. So, I mean, I understand that the platform should get money off of it every time because you're providing the platform, but I would think that would be part of the liquidity of the asset, right? That's part of the thing that people like.
We haven't looked at the secondary market in that sort of sense. We view this once again as a commercial solution.
But then why not just have an OS commerce or something like sorry, man, I'm not I'm just trying to get my head around it. Like if the NFT, because that's the only use case I can understand for NFT is like they're usable for secondary markets. So I don't want this data set anymore. I want to sell it on.
Why?
Well, because like otherwise I could just go to a website that has where someone can, some
like
satellite
a seal
company
or something. You know what I mean? Like this salmon is real legit salmon. You know what I mean? It could be used in that regard.
You guys are getting outside of what an NFT is. What do you when people are talking about tokenizing things, what do you think they're talking about? That doesn't mean that there has to be a secondary market for it to functionally work. I
No,
get
but
what you're
what
saying.
it says, it unlocks a zip file or something, right? Let's just use that
It,
example.
for example, it can remove secondary login credential needs. It proves unique ownership of something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if
But
I'm
why have
tokenizing
ownership
gold,
if you can't sell that ownership on?
I it's like
Why not just have
uh,
permission and then not ownership at all?
well, here's the thing. So, for example, on the Tixie one, people can resell their tickets,
Yeah,
right? They hit resell, go back on the marketplace. I totally
yeah,
get what you're saying. I
yeah.
just
That makes
don't view
sense.
it. I just totally don't view it as like forming a secondary market for these sort of assets as a requirement for NFT to be used.
Right, right.
Mm.
I don't think it's a bad idea, but you're getting
Yeah,
into a very regulated, secure sort of place
yeah,
that would be very hard to play off. But thank you for the inspiration. Maybe that's a long-term goal to have, is to be able to create a secondary market for all these assets. It's just, for example, I get an NFT that has set within it that I get to use this for a month.
yeah. Right.
When that dies, the NFT dies,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So I can't use it anymore. So that's why we're using that sort of structure.
I see. I see.
Can I
But,
ask a
but
question? So, can you
sure.
make an NFT explode?
Yeah.
I think you
Really?
burn it technically, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I kind of wanted to just show up at someone's house and then just like in a week, like it does it
I'll
all
try
on
to
its own.
I'll try to build that into the user interface, is that when it's out of usage, they get a notification and it blows up in front of
Yeah.
them.
I feel
How's
like
about
that would
that?
make it a little bit more exciting. Some of this stuff can be a little dry.
Like
I
Inspector
wanted,
Gadget's note, you know.
well, wait, I know that we're coming up on the hour and whatnot, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in Poland. You know, my family's Polish. You know, I Polska dziewczyna, but what's going on with Poland and crypto? And more broadly, like I hear a lot of mixed reviews on the government there right now. Like, what's the deal in Poland and how has it handled a lot of like the COVID lockdowns? And I guess that's more than just crypto in Poland, but just how's freedom faring in Poland
Uh,
right now?
well, as I think the crypto space here is one of the older ones. It got mature pretty quickly. I was able to do things with crypto here that when I told people in the U.S., they were blown away, where, someone sends me a text message, I take that to an ATM, put in the code, and I get cash out, even though what they just sent to the service was crypto, right? We were doing that 5 years ago here. Unfortunately, we're in the EU, so like we fit under like EU's AMLD5 directive and all these sort of regulatory things. But then you also have how the nations itself approach certain things. To be honest, one of the biggest kind of crimes being done in Poland is kind of making it harder for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Uh, I've
That's the same in
upset
every state. That's the prerogative of the state, just to make it hard.
Well, but you do have states who, approach it differently, or nations that approach it differently, and then states within those nations that approach it differently. And the problem with Poland, I mean, Europe for the most part, well, generally the world,
Yeah.
is that it's federal government heavy. Uh, Germany's a little different around that, but
No, but Europe,
well,
you've got this extra super state, the European Union, on top of that. So
the
you've
weird
just got
thing is,
layers upon layers of
the weird thing
bureaucracy.
about this is like going back to the EU's AMLD5, like that actually kind of helped. It provides some sort of clarity and like a blanket for all these companies that are in the union. They're like, okay, now I know what to do, right? But then you have, on the ground situations. The government here isn't friendly towards crypto. From a political, psychological way, I understand why. It's nothing but a risk for them. We're going to promote crypto. We're going to promote crypto. Some bubble bursts. We've had these little things. People lose loads of money, and spotlight is on the party that promoted it. And
Yeah,
by
but it's
doing
also an opportunity, you know what I mean, for a new technology to take hold It's
Yeah, but
definitely been very helpful for certain nations, you know?
uh, no doubt. But you got to think about a politician. Like their whole thing, really, at the end of the day, is risk mitigation for themselves. Um, so I don't. I think there's a few politicians here, but they're not heavy guys because the heavy guys have a lifetime career to uphold, and they can't do that. So they've also pushed out a lot of crypto companies, not from operating here in the sense of their office or et cetera, but their jurisdiction, right? So the biggest exchange here was BitBay. They're
Hmm.
not in Polish jurisdiction for a while now, right? So and it's just like it was someone like me, I was on stage once with a big minister from out here, who runs, kind of manages the startup funds and all these things that are going through the government. And guy asked me on the panel, what are the benefits of being? I said, you tell me, what are the benefits of my startup being registered in Poland? That being the mothership. So there's zero. There's none. Right. Actually, registering your company in the UK instead of the US, you're losing money doing that when it comes to the valuation of your company as well. So
Yeah, but that's changing too. Like the FCA has done a lot to make it easier for startups. Definitely easier than Germany. And yeah, we'll see what happens there, especially with Brexit, because they don't have this super state above them called the EU now, so they can be a little bit more flexible with what they do. We'll see what happens with Britain.
yeah, it's to be honest, when it comes back to that, like the valuation stuff, it's really about well, it's about the entrepreneurs a bit too, but it's really about the investors. At the end of the day, I have British company and dealt with British investors and European investors daily almost, right? Uh, and it's a different approach than the Americans kind of have, and that's the reason these American startups have built their valuations as well, is because the investors are like, I believe there. It's more of like, I believe in your vision, I believe in what you're doing. Do the numbers potentially back it up? Yeah, okay, then
Yeah,
here's money, kiddo. Go fucking fulfill your dream. And in the UK and Europe, it's a little bit more like, okay, here's red, here's green, you're over here, under here. And it becomes something that, for entrepreneurs like me, especially, it's not the most conducive, but that whole mission of trying to show that you can build a globally successful startup out of here, we've kind of done. So it's doable. It's not the easiest environment. And
totally.
sometimes I want to be back in the States and just kind of
Yeah.
running.
Oh, look, Americans have it in their blood. They want to invest in something. You want to, you see this in the film industry in Australia, for instance. The film industry, it's all funded by the government over there, because
Oh, it's horrible.
there's no appetite for like some rich mogul. Yeah, I want to be executive producer here. Bomb. That sounds cool. Over
Except
there, it's like,
Murdoch.
oh no, I'll except Murdoch maybe, yeah, but you get and then you get all these government films say, we only invest if you have 3 Chinese, a black person, and an Irishman in
Oh, they're
there.
doing
And
that already? They're doing
they've
the
been doing it for
Oscars?
years. So you get all these like films that are just really sort of covering their, I don't know, mandates
It's
to
like
not
you could
be.
never do a Australian World War II film about Australian soldiers in World War II. Like that wouldn't fit their
Uh,
quotas or whatever.
if you had female soldiers, maybe, but no, I don't. I think there was a
Well,
game. There was a
well,
game like that. Yeah, they were forced to make the soldiers female. I was like, what? There was no female soldiers in World War II.
I've done stuff in film, and I know how that structure is. I'm from LA originally, but I know how the structure is here in Poland, and they've destroyed, the competitiveness. That I'm an artist at the end of the day, like I'm a creator, and when you create systems like that, you're just disincentivizing, you know, brash creativity.
Oh yeah,
So
and you're just forcing a government line. This is the important part of private enterprise, private investment, and Americans have had it in their blood. They invented the VC, and I mean, it comes across to Europe, but like you said, Europe's the VCs over here. They're just very, very careful. They don't invest in, like, Amazon would never have taken off. The amount of time that Amazon lost money, they would have just gone like, nah,
I
we're
think
out.
they've had one profitable quarter the entire history.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different approach towards value. And not just, once again, why, when you look at something like Bitcoin, I'm not going to get into the arguments who created it, where it came from, etc. But to me, in its core, it's a very American sort of uh, approach. And the thing you mentioned about investors, all that stuff, it's absolutely true. I'm glad you see that, because most people don't get, like, what has made American startups or salesmen, whatever, really, really successful. It's definitely not intelligence. Our IQ tests show that it's lower than polls, for example. It's not market size itself. Otherwise, China would just be running all over the world all the time. So what are these little intangibles that create, successful startups, successful entrepreneurs? A lot of time it's cultural and attitude sets, being able to talk about yourself. Like Polish startup guys have a hard time talking about themselves and in a confident manner, other than being like, I went to this school and here's our product and here are our features. Right? It's more about bravado. So I'm glad you see that, but I think Australians have that in them. I when I lived in Santa Monica, you could hear the Australians. They're the only people I'd say have more American kind of loudness than Americans are Australians.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's all meant as a compliment.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a great show. I think we ran the gamut here. Grant, thanks so much for joining us. Where can people connect with you?
Across social media, make sure to follow GB Savant, like the word savant, GB Savant, and follow anything at Copernic Space. Thanks for having me once again. Happy to do also a follow-up, deeper follow-up around that DeFi and regulatory stuff. I can bring our CTO on who can go deeper into that aspect. So happy to set that up for you guys. And thank you once again.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next time on the Tatiana Show. Bye, everybody.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show.